In the stillness of the night, twin brothers Kofi and Kwame faced off against a brutal gang, not just fighting for survival, but also because of the color of their skin. The gang members looked down on them, not knowing that the two men standing before them were battle-tested warriors, forged through fierce life-or-math struggles. For the first time in their lives, Kofi and Kwame realized that not all wars are fought on battlefields. Some enemies are invisible, hidden beneath the guise of racial prejudice. No matter who they were, their enemies saw them only as weak targets, ready to be taken down. But Kofi and Kwame knew that this time, they wouldn't be defeated. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Late at night, the dim light from street lamps flickered on the empty streets, like lonely torches fighting against the vast darkness. Kofi and Kwame walked side by side, their figures merging with the night, their eyes alert, ready for whatever might come. They had been through fierce battles, life and death missions, but tonight, something felt different. This was not a battlefield. This was the place they had grown up. Once a place of carefree childhood memories, but now it had become a land of fear. "You're sure Maria didn't get it wrong?" Kwame asked, his voice low, his eyes scanning the darkened houses where no one could be seen. He was still irritated from being dragged out of the house just to wander around this neighborhood. Kofi didn't respond immediately, his gaze fixed on every movement in the shadows. "No, she's right," he said, his tone cold. "Someone's targeting us." Kwame smirked and glanced at his brother. "We're the target of some gangsters, and you still want to take a walk?" Kofi didn't laugh. "I'm not joking. Whatever's happening in this city, we need to check it out. When did everything get so tense?" The chill of the night seemed to weigh heavier now. They walked down the deserted streets, the only sound being the echo of their footsteps. The recent attacks still hung in the air, stories of gangs with strange tattoos, hunters, and victims who couldn't defend themselves. Suddenly a small noise broke the silence ahead, causing both men to stop. The sound of breaking glass, or just a small collision, hard to tell. They exchanged a glance, silent suspicion passing between them, and then moved forward. But the uneasy feeling lingered, refusing to let go. Kofi signaled for Kwame to be quiet, and they moved more cautiously, eyes never leaving the darkness in front of them. Then a figure appeared in their line of sight, standing still in the corner of the alley between two houses. An old man, small in stature, his wrinkled skin and eyes filled with an indescribable worry. He looked at Kofi and Kwame, then suddenly stepped closer, his voice trembling but serious. "Be careful, boys," the old man whispered, his tone low. "Something dark is sweeping through this neighborhood. We're not the only ones in this darkness." Both Kofi and Kwame were taken aback, but neither said anything. They didn't feel reassured by his sudden appearance, but his words only deepened their anxiety. The old man silently left, leaving behind an invisible tension that hung in the air. "Don't let it fool you, bro," Kofi whispered. "Let's keep moving." They continued down the dark streets, but the feeling of being watched wouldn't leave them. A car drove by, its headlights briefly illuminating the ground before disappearing into the shadows, leaving behind an eerie echo. Their pace quickened, every sound around them sharpening like a warning. Tonight wasn't an ordinary night. Not every night was cold and silent like this. There was something off, as if the darkness was waiting to swallow everything. Before they knew it, another noise came from an alley on their left. A flash of movement, another shadow darting across the street, a soft but unmistakable footstep. Kofi and Kwame glanced quickly, but no one appeared. They stayed silent, eyes wary, never leaving the darkness ahead. Then, as they approached an intersection, a group of people suddenly appeared from a dark alley to the right. They wore black coats, shaved heads, with strange tattoos on their arms. Kofi and Kwame stopped, feeling the tension rise, the atmosphere thickening more than ever. "Well, well, twins," said the tallest of the group, a smirk crossing his face, his eyes full of challenge and contempt. "This will be a fun little party. We're not just going to carve you up, we're going to prove our power." Neither Kofi nor Kwame moved, but their eyes had completely changed. From Special Forces soldiers, used to silence and precision, they were now like tigers, waiting to pounce. The tension in the air spread, and the gang didn't realize they had made a fatal mistake. As the gang leader, a tall thug, took another step forward, he suddenly raised his hand to signal his men to surround the brothers. "This time, you won't get away," he said, his voice full of confidence, as if he was sure he had the upper hand. But Kofi and Kwame weren't about to let them come any closer. The caution of seasoned soldiers kicked in. Kofi's eyes gleamed with a sharp light, his hand slowly clenching into a fist. "You're wrong," Kofi said, his voice full of challenge. A moment of silence passed. Then, like a storm, the fight broke out. Tonight there would be no retreat. The battle came without warning, like an unexpected storm crashing in. The gangsters from the crew charged forward relentlessly, fists filled with hatred, and their brutality made the air around them feel ready to explode. Kofi and Kwame knew the odds were stacked against them, but they were ready to face the enemies trying to encroach on their turf. They had fought in countless wars, but this time it was real. No rules, no commands, just life and death. Kofi surged forward, his punch lightning fast, sending a gangster flying with a defiant look in his eyes. The crack of bones as Kofi's fist connected made the air even more tense. Kwame was no slower, twisting around to strike a man holding a metal pipe, knocking him flat on the ground. Both brothers' eyes never left the gangsters. Each punch, each step was a perfect combination of Special Forces precision, no hesitation, only accuracy. The moment of silence before the battle broke was shattered by screams, and the gangsters realized they had made a deadly mistake in confronting Kofi and Kwame. Despite their weapons, they were no match for two experienced warriors. The thugs fell quickly, unexpectedly, and without the chance to fight back. Tension spread through the air as those who seemed invincible were now taking humiliating defeats. But the fight didn't end there. Rico, the gang leader, noticed the shift and the defeat of his men. His arrogance and confidence were shaken, but instead of backing down, he charged into the fray, hatred burning in his eyes. Rico advanced toward Kofi, gripping a metal pipe tightly, letting out an angry roar. "What makes you think you can win?" Rico's voice cut through the air, filled with hostility and rage. Kofi didn't respond immediately. He stared at Rico with a cold, fearless gaze. The world seemed to freeze in that moment, only the heavy breathing of both sides filling the silence of the night. Kofi took a deep breath, his eyes hardening, and his voice rang out, unwavering. "It's not us winning, it's you losing." Kofi's calm response enraged Rico. The gang leader charged at Kofi, swinging his metal pipe with all his might, hoping to end the fight with one crushing blow. But Kofi wasn't afraid. He moved like lightning, dodging the first strike, then quickly spinning and landing a powerful kick to Rico's stomach. The blow made Rico stagger, losing his balance and falling to the ground. But he didn't give up. Rico got back on his feet, furious, his eyes still burning with hatred. "You don't get it," Rico growled. "You can't win. We have strength, we have power, and we'll never let you ruin our plan." But as Rico continued to resist, the situation outside began to change. The sound of sirens broke the silence of the night. Less than a minute later, the first police car appeared, its flashing lights cutting through the darkness, lighting up the street. The gangsters suddenly panicked, realizing the police presence was a real threat. Rico glanced around and knocked another one of his men down as he tried to flee. The tension in his eyes became more evident. Each gangster, though arrogant, couldn't avoid the growing fear. The presence of the police had changed the game, and Rico knew that if he didn't retreat now, he wouldn't escape. "All right, everyone pull back," Rico shouted, trying to retain some control. But it was too late. The gangsters scattered in panic, leaving Rico standing in the midst of the chaos. Kofi and Kwame wouldn't let him escape. They rushed at Rico with the speed of a storm, determined not to let him slip away. As soon as Rico turned to run, Kwame's powerful kick sent him crashing to the ground, and Kofi immediately subdued him. Despite Rico's strength and power, the brothers were far too accustomed to life and death struggles. They wouldn't let any enemy slip through their grasp. Rico lay on the ground, his eyes filled with anger but also a hint of weakness. "You don't get it," he whispered, voice full of defiance. "You think capturing me solves everything? There are people behind me. People you can't touch." Kofi didn't respond, his grip tightening on Rico. A chilling feeling rose in Kofi's chest. He wasn't just a petty gangster. He was a pawn in a bigger game, a game Kofi and Kwame hadn't yet realized, but now they were a part of. "Who you talking about?" Kwame asked coldly, gripping Rico's hand tighter, making him wince in pain. Rico sneered, his eyes flashing with a dangerous light. "Calhoun," he said, his voice low but powerful. "He's the one behind it all. He's the one who recruited us for this plan, and you'll never stop him." The name Calhoun hung in the air like a curse. Kofi and Kwame exchanged a look, a sense of doubt and fear rising in their chests. They couldn't believe someone could control this gang, a force so powerful it made the entire city tremble. "Calhoun," Kofi whispered, his gaze darkening. "This is someone we can't overlook." But before they could think further, police cars raced toward them, and a group of armed officers stepped out of the vehicles, heading toward the brothers. "We got a tip," one of them said. "You need to let him go." Kofi and Kwame exchanged glances, knowing this wasn't the time to continue a fight with the police. They couldn't leave a trace and couldn't let Calhoun slip out of their sights. "This isn't the time to argue," Kofi said, his voice lowered. "Rico will be the bait. Calhoun is the one we need to face." Kwame nodded, and together they stood up, leaving Rico to the police. But inside, a sense of tension remained, for they knew what they had just uncovered was only the beginning of a dangerous game they couldn't yet fully comprehend. In the darkness of the night, a door had opened, and the path ahead would not be easy. The night had passed, but the tension still hung heavy over the city. Kofi and Kwame stood silently in the dimly lit room of the police station, the yellow glow from the overhead bulbs casting strange shadows on the walls. Rico, the gang leader, was tightly bound, sitting in the corner, his eyes filled with hatred as they fixed on the two brothers. Rico had nothing left to protect himself except his stubborn mouth. Though he had been defeated and taken into custody by the police, he still sat there with a smug smirk, showing no sign of regret. Kofi and Kwame stood across from him, their patience beginning to wear thin. But they knew that to turn this game around, they needed his confession. "What do you think you're going to do with me?" Rico spat, his eyes constantly shifting around the room. "I'm not telling you anything." Kofi didn't respond right away. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving Rico's. His fingers tightened into a fist, but he didn't rush. "I'll give you one last chance," Kofi said, his voice as cold as ice. "If you tell us what we need to know, maybe you'll live. Otherwise, there won't be anyone left to protect you." Rico stared at Kofi for a moment, then sneered. "You think with a few words from me you can win? Out there, Calhoun is stronger than all of you combined. He's not someone you can touch. He's built this empire." But not everything was as Rico thought. His first confessions didn't seem like much, but those words opened a world of crime that Kofi and Kwame had never imagined. "Who is Calhoun?" Kwame spoke up, his voice low, his gaze intense. "Tell us who he is, and tell us everything." Rico sighed, as though he knew there was no escaping the truth. "He's a criminal, not just the leader of this gang. Calhoun has power, money. He's bribed the authorities, the forces in this city. He's built a brutal bounty system where those deemed unworthy of life are eliminated." Rico's words were like an electric shock, making Kofi and Kwame freeze. They had never imagined that Calhoun, someone they had only heard of by name, was part of such a vast criminal network. Kofi's eyes sharpened, his anger and determination beginning to show. "Kubachev doesn't just want control of the city," Kofi muttered, his voice darkening. "He wants to wipe out anyone he deems unworthy to live. That's why people in our community are being attacked. That's why we've been targeted. And you're next in line for him." Rico laughed derisively as if he knew nothing would change. Kofi and Kwame stood there, hearing the words that twisted their hearts. It wasn't just a random gang, but a whole criminal network, run by a tyrant, and now Calhoun was behind it all. Kofi knew that if they didn't act fast, everything they had done would be in vain. "So where is Calhoun?" Kwame asked, his voice steady, as if he already saw the path ahead. Rico didn't answer immediately. His eyes flicked around as if considering something. Finally he sighed and uttered a sentence that left Kofi and Kwame stunned. "You probably already know. He has a place, a private mansion. It's outside the city in the middle of a forest. That's where he keeps all the documents, the evidence of everything he's done. All of his plans, all the illegal contracts. Everything is stored there." Rico's words revealed a new path, but it wasn't an easy one. Kofi and Kwame couldn't act immediately. They needed to plan. They needed support from those who could help, and they needed proof to take down Calhoun. But that wouldn't be simple. "The police won't be able to help us," Kofi said, his gaze resolute. "We'll have to do it ourselves. This time we're walking this path alone." Kwame nodded. He knew that despite everything they had done, the road ahead was long and hard, but they had one clear goal: to take down Calhoun and his criminal network and bring justice to the innocent. "We'll have to prepare carefully," Kofi continued. "Everything needs to be perfect. If we make one wrong move, Calhoun won't just retaliate, he'll destroy everything. Do you understand?" Kwame nodded again, his eyes filled with resolve. "I understand. We'll do whatever it takes." The two brothers turned to face Rico. His eyes no longer held the smug arrogance they once did. He knew that no matter how powerful he was, in the end he couldn't escape those who were determined to bring justice. Kofi took a step forward and placed his hand on Rico's shoulder. "You'll stay alive, but if you don't help us, the price you'll pay will be much worse." Rico said nothing, only staring at them with eyes full of defiance. But after a long pause he nodded, once again acknowledging that he had nowhere left to run. Kofi and Kwame left the room, determined to fill in the gaps of Calhoun's plan. They knew they weren't just fighting a tyrant, but facing a criminal system far more powerful than they could have imagined. And the only way to win was to take down Calhoun and expose him. But as they walked out of the police station, a lingering sense of tension remained in their hearts. Justice had not truly been served. This fight, no matter how it ended, was far from over. Hit the subscribe button and don't forget to leave a comment so I can hear your thoughts and suggestions for future videos.